that, this is pretty from It's a Pretty World. I'm making 2 cards using Be My Valentines Limited Edition stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And I've already pre-selected all the stamps from the stamp set called Be My Valentine. And I'm going to use this designer paper which is included in this set, in this kit. And also this block which is also a part of this kit, and I'm going to start stamping these roses onto this designer paper using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. Now this black ink is a good one for Copic coloring. So my idea is to show you Copic coloring on 2 different surfaces, one on a designer paper and one on a colored surface. So the first card we're going to do it on the designer paper, so I'm going to just stamp this rose here, and then I made a a mask which I'm going to mask off this flower, and I'm going to stamp the leaf on so what happens is the leaf then goes behind the flower. I'm sure everybody knows how masking works, so I'm just masking off, and I've created a little cluster of flower there, and I'm starting to Copic color this flower. So I'm starting off with the darkest shade in my collections of red, which is R89, and I'm laying it wherever the shadow of the petal would be, and also I'm laying some lines where the artist has already drawn, and then I'm going to blend the darkest color with the next color, which is R39. Now keep in mind, this is not a thick cardstock like a Copic cardstock, so the paper is going to bleed, so you don't want to push your markers really hard onto this paper. You really want to use your hand, like you really need to use a very light hand and let the paper and let the ink do its thing. Don't push it too hard. If you pushed it too hard, I'm telling you, the colors will bleed, so be careful about that. So I'm just coloring the petal in a gradient manner. Here I'm showing you the second petal here again, laying the darker shade in the shadow area, and then also adding a couple of lines where the artist has already drawn to show creases in the leaves, or fold in, not in the leaves, in the petals, or folds in the petal. And then I'm blending that with the next darker shade, which is R39, and then with R45, and then R35 and R32. So those are the colors that I'm using, and I'm just going to keep repeating that all over this particular flower until I am all done. I'm going to leave you with some music so you can watch me color the rest of the card. I've just kept the coloring so that you can see how it is colored, and if you don't want to, go ahead, skip ahead, and you can of course skip ahead and then see the next part, and I'll see you after I'm done coloring. that. So I'm almost done with all my coloring here. Here we go, and this is all done. So now I'm going to start coloring the leaves, and for the leaves the color that I'm going to use is G99, G94, G24 and YG03. I'm going to do it a little different here. We're going to add the darkest color as usual in the darkest area, so that means to say wherever the leaf is folding and wherever there are creases in the petal, and then also in the center of the vein. And the artist has already created a couple of veins for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add some lines over it, and I'm going to extend those veins a bit, and I'm going to blend the G99 with G94, and then I'm going to blend the G94 with G24, and then after I'm done with G24, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take YG03 and go all over it, so that the olivey color that I use, the olive base, kind of becomes a little more greener than the olive shade. And there you go, that's how that leaf is made. And again, I'm just showing you once more here, just adding the darker shade. You see the vein in the center vein is not really long enough, so I'm just making it longer, and then I'm adding my own veins to the leaf. There was just one vein that the artist had drawn, but I kind of added a couple more to the leaf, and I did exactly the same thing again. Started blending it, and then the folded leaf that you see on the edge, I'm just going to use a lighter color, and then I'm just going to leave it just to show that that leaf is over, like folding over the petal. And you can see that a little bit more on this particular petal right here. I'm just adding the veins, and then I'm going to add the lighter shade in the bottom part of it, and then you can see how that petal kind of folds over the other petal. And I'm just doing the same thing again for these two leaves here at the bottom as well. And then once I'm done coloring all these leaves, I had already colored a flower earlier, and I had fussy cut it, so I'm going to use that in this corner. And there's also the stem and the stamp set, which I'm going to stamp using the same black ink in the corner, and I'm going to adhere this flower on it. But before that, we need to color it, and this time I'm skipping G99 and just using G94 and G24 and YG03, and I'm going to use the darkest towards the left side of the stem and the lighter shade going towards the right of the stem, and then I'm going to adhere this flower on it. But before I adhered the flower on it, I decided to stamp my sentiment, and the sentiment that I'm using for this is Happy Valentine's Day, and I'm actually stamping it and embossing it with gold embossing powder. And now I'm going to adhere this flower in the corner using liquid adhesive. Obviously I'm figuring out where my liquid adhesive is. There you go. And then after I'm adhering this, I did I did cut the excess off the edge, the hanging edge. And then I took this tea colored markers, Copic markers, they're more in the grayer shade, and I'm adding that in the bottom of these flowers. And the reason I'm doing that is because, remember, we are coloring on a designer paper, so we want these flowers to pop off the designer paper, because these are one layer flowers except for that one in the corner. Adding a little bit of gray under these flowers leaves and flowers will make your image look as if they popped up or they're popping up, and they will look more dimensional. You can see there already on the cardstock. And then I've taken another designer paper again from the same kit, from the limited edition kit, and I will adhere that onto that cardstock. And I stamped that extra sentiment on a cardstock, and I'd kept it aside. Now for the second card, what I did is I took a pink cardstock, and I'm using this cute little floral heart stamp set. It's a rubber cling stamp set, and I'm stamping it using Memento Tuxedo gray ink, and I'm planning to color it like a no line coloring, and then I'm going to color this using the Copic marker. So this is the second part of the card of this video, where I'm showing you coloring on a colored cardstock rather than a white cardstock. I'm using the same colors that I used previously onto the designer paper cardstock. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm going to start laying all the shadow, the darkest color in the shadow area. Again, the artist has done a great job showing us where the shadows would be. So I'm just going ahead and laying the shadows wherever it is, and then I'm starting to blend that shadow area with the next color, which is R39, and I'm just going a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, and then blending that out with R45, which is the next lighter color, and I'm doing that again to all the petals. Now this is a cardstock, so you don't really have to be light-handed, so go ahead and blend multiple times onto the same color over and over again, because that's what makes it nice and smooth. You don't have to do that in the designer paper because the paper was lighter and the ink would blend by themselves. And then I'm just blending that R45 with R35, and then after R35 I'm going to blend this whole thing with R32. You will notice I am scrubbing a lot with my R32, and the reason is because it is drying up, it is dying on me. I need to refill it, and I was too lazy to stop the video and refill it, obviously, so I continued with it. Sometimes it's not good to do that, you will fray the edge of the nib if it is dry, but I just kept going. It wasn't too dry, but it was dry enough for me to keep, and I had to do it multiple times to blend the color in. So once I had done coloring all of this with all the petals all done, I took a white pencil. I used a Polychromos white pencil. You could even use a Prismacolor pencil, and then I started to highlight the flower. Now you can highlight the flower using a gel pen, but I always feel like when you use a gel pen, it's extremely bright and white and kind of makes it look a little artificial. But when you do this with the colored pencil, it just gives enough highlight. What it does is it just tones down the pink into a lighter pink shade, versus using a gel pen, which would make it look really white, which is okay too in certain places. But on this particular card, I just wanted this flower to look more natural than anything else, the highlight to look more natural, the shadows to look more natural. So I'm just using this white pen all over the place where the highlights would be. I'm so sorry that I keep going off camera. I'm still trying to figure out how to stay within the frame. I probably will eventually get a hold of that. And there you go. So that completed the coloring. So now what I did, I put this back again into my Misty, and I had not taken the stamp out, and I used this Delicata gold ink and I stamped it over it again. And here is the trick that I learned from Amy Reservi in one of her videos. I'm hoping I'm telling her name right. What she did is she stamped it with Delicata ink, and then she took Perfect Pearl in gold. She was using copper, obviously. I'm using gold, and then I'm just going to go over it, and that just made that ink just pop, and it looks so beautiful. It almost looked like you had foiled it. Of course, it was not foiling. It's not as bright as foiling, but it does look like it's foiled, and I loved it. You see how beautiful it is? And then what I did is I cleaned the stamp and I put it onto my my ink pad, on my stamp pad, and then I had also cut another mask out of the same masking paper, and then I started to stamp this floral heart once again all over the pink cardstock, and I'm trying to figure out which direction to stamp that floral in. Sometimes it is hard. Anyway, so I'm just stamping it all over the surface on the pink cardstock. I'm removing this mask and I'm adding that Perfect Pearl again on all the places where I just added this ink. And as I'm doing it, I'm just dusting it off using a really fluffy brush, which just takes away the fine dust. And I'm just going to place my what you call the mask once again, and you can see the difference there. The one before the Delicata when adding perfect pearls and one after, so you can see the difference. It's a little lighter than the other. And then after it was done, I took this Bistrous Oxide ink, I think it's called Raspberry Fizz, and I went all around the edges of this pink cardstock. And again, I did the same thing. I added the gray shade around this flower, again because it did have a background behind it, all those stamped flowers. I wanted this heart to pop off, so I just added a little bit of gray, and that helps for that image to pop out of the background that you've created. And now it was time to add the sentiment, and the sentiment for this I used was ever thine, ever mine, ever ours, and I stamped that using black Versamark ink. Of course, my Versamark ink lid is broken, so I've just added a little masking tape. I need to buy a new one, it looks ridiculous anyway. And then I added the additional sentiment which said happily ever together I added that at the bottom using a foam tape. I stamped that sentiment using the same VersaFine black onyx ink. And then I did the same thing for the previous card that I had made. So this would read, Happy Valentine's Day, I love you so much. It's just, I love all the sentiments in this stamp set, and the font and the style. So there are the two finished top the panels, main panels of the card. And then I took two additional designer papers from the same card kit, and I adhered this floral images that I had colored onto those designer papers. Now it was time to mount them onto a white cardstock, but before that I had an extra floral flower with me in which I had colored earlier and kept. And I thought I'll use it for the inside again. This is something that I don't do very often, but I was inspired by Amy, who always finishes her card inside as well. So I was inspired by her, and I'm doing this for my card as well. So I adhered that flower in the corner, and then I stamped the sentiment which read, you are loved, you and adored more than you'll ever know. And I stamped that using a black ink. And then I added an additional sentiment which said loved forever, with that same Distress Oxide ink, so that everything looked cohesive. And then I adhered that flower panel, or this colored floral image onto the side folding white note card. For the second card, I took a top folding white note card. This white note card is Nina Solar White 110 pound. And then I took that same rubber stamp or cling stamp, and I stamped it using the Delicata ink. But this time I did not use the Perfect Pearl because I wanted to keep the inside a little muted. And then I took the stamp which said you are loved, and I stamped it using the pink Raspberry Fizz Distress Oxide ink. And then I added an additional sentiment which said, I think it said, what did it say? I don't know what it said. I think it said my one and only, and I stamped that with black, and then I adhered that panel over it. And once after I had done adhering, it was time to add a little sparkle as usual. So in this case I used some pink Pretty Posh ink jewels, and for the other one I used white Pretty Pink Posh jewels gemstones onto the base on top of this card. And for this one I used a little more. I added it all over the flowers just to give it some extra bling. So here are the two completed cards. I hope you enjoyed this video, and give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you.